He had already written the note. It was folded in half on the kitchen table. 4 sentences. He'd rewritten it 3 times, not because the words were hard to find, but because he kept stopping to cry, and the ink kept smearing, and some part of him, some stubborn, buried part, felt like the letter had to be right. Marcus was 34 years old. He was sitting alone in a dark apartment in the middle of a Tuesday night in February, and he had made up his mind that he was done. He was done fighting, done pretending, done waking up every morning and putting on a face that said everything is fine when everything, every single thing, had fallen completely apart. He sat there in the dark, and that is exactly where Jesus met him. If you had known Marcus 5 years earlier, you would not have recognized the man sitting at that table. 5 years ago, Marcus was the kind of man people described with words like solid and dependable. He coached youth football on Saturday mornings. He called his mother every Sunday. He had a laugh that filled up a room without even trying, the kind of laugh that made strangers smile just because they could hear it. He had a wife named Dina. They'd been high school sweethearts, married at 25, bought their first house at 27, had a son named Jordan at 28. Little Jordan with the wide eyes and the gap between his front teeth, who called his father Dada until he was 4 years old, and then switched to Daddy overnight. And Marcus told Dina that the switch nearly broke his heart, even though it was a happy thing. That was the version of Marcus the world knew. Then the car accident happened. A Wednesday afternoon in March. Marcus was driving home from work. A truck ran a red light going 50 miles an hour and hit the driver's side of Marcus's car so hard that 3 witnesses on the sidewalk thought no one could have survived it. Marcus survived, but he was in the hospital for 6 weeks, 3 surgeries. His left leg would never be quite right again, a constant, low-grade ache that lived in his hip and knee and reminded him every single day of what happened. He couldn't coach anymore, couldn't chase Jordan around the backyard, couldn't stand long enough to grill on the porch the way he used to, with a soda in his hand and music playing through the screen door. He came home from the hospital a different man, and he didn't know how to tell anyone that. So he didn't. He smiled when people came to visit. He said he was healing fine, healing slow but fine. And then he would close the front door and sit in the dim living room and feel the darkness pulling at the edges of everything like a tide coming in. Dina tried. God bless her, she tried. She held him through the night terrors. She learned to read his silences. She loved him with a steadiness that should have been enough. And Marcus knew, he knew, that her love was real. But depression is a liar. It doesn't care what's true. It takes the real things, the good things, the beautiful things, and it covers them over like snow covers a road until you can't tell where it's safe to walk anymore. By the 2nd year, Marcus had stopped going to church, not dramatically, not with a declaration. He just stopped going. First one Sunday, then 2, then a month passed, and then it was a year. And somewhere in that year, God started to feel like something that had belonged to the Marcus before, the one with the laugh and the Saturday mornings and the full life. The Marcus now didn't feel like he deserved any of that. By the 3rd year, Dina left. Not because she stopped loving him. She told him that on the way out. She told him with tears streaming down her face that she still loved him. She would always love him. But she couldn't watch him disappear and not be allowed to help. She took Jordan. And that was the night something fundamental broke inside Marcus. Something that had been cracking slowly for 3 years finally just gave way, like a floorboard that had been weakening under weight you couldn't see, and then one day you put your foot down and the whole thing goes. He moved into a small apartment. He worked from home, barely. He ate when he remembered to eat. He talked to almost no one. His mother called. Sometimes he picked up, and sometimes he didn't. February came, cold and gray and relentless. And on a Tuesday night, Marcus sat at his kitchen table in the dark, looked at a folded piece of paper with 4 sentences on it, and decided he was done. He wasn't going to pray. He hadn't prayed in 2 years, hadn't wanted to. Part of him was too exhausted, and part of him was too angry, and part of him had quietly decided that if God was real and God was good and God could see everything, then all of this, the accident, the depression, Dina leaving, Jordan sleeping somewhere else every night, all of it meant either God wasn't paying attention or didn't care. Either way, Marcus didn't have much to say to him. But sitting there in the dark, something happened that he still can't fully explain. He heard Jordan's voice, not from outside, not from a phone or a recording, from somewhere inside his chest, as if the memory had weight and sound. His son's voice, maybe 3 years old, small and sleepy, saying, "Daddy, are you there?" It was something Jordan used to say when he woke up in the night. He'd call out from his room, not scared exactly, just checking. "Are you there?" And Marcus would always say, "I'm here, buddy. Daddy's right here." And Jordan would settle back to sleep. "Are you there?" Marcus sat at that table and something split open in him. Because he thought about his son waking up one day to a world where Daddy wasn't there anymore. Not down the hall, not across town, not at the other end of a phone call, just gone. And Jordan would be 6 years old, then 16, then 30, carrying that. Carrying the knowledge that his father chose to leave him. Marcus put his head down on the table and he started to weep. Not crying, weeping. From somewhere so deep it didn't even sound like him. And from the bottom of that weeping, from the absolute floor of his pain, something came out of him that he hadn't meant to say, that he hadn't planned, that surprised him even as he heard himself saying it. "God, if you're real, if you ever loved me, I need you right now. I don't have anything left. I'm not asking for everything to be okay. I'm just asking you to show me that I matter. Show me that there's a reason. Please, I'm begging you, please." The apartment was silent. The refrigerator hummed. Wind moved against the window. Marcus lay his cheek on the table, eyes closed, completely hollowed out. And then the room changed. There is no scientific explanation for what happened next. Marcus has told this story dozens of times, and every time he tells it, he says the same thing. "I know what I know. I was there." The darkness in the room shifted, not like a light turning on, not bright or sudden, more like the quality of the dark changed. Like when clouds move away from the moon on a winter night and everything becomes silver and still. Like something that had been pressing down had lifted an inch. And then Marcus felt it. A hand on his back. He went completely rigid. He was alone in the apartment. He knew he was alone. He had locked the door himself. But the sensation was undeniable. A hand, warm and steady, resting between his shoulder blades. Not moving. Just there. He was afraid to open his eyes. And then he heard a voice. Not loud. Not booming or theatrical or like anything he'd imagined a voice from God would sound like. It was quiet. Quiet the way deep water is quiet. Quiet the way the first moment after a storm goes still is quiet. Marcus, just his name, one word. But the way it was said, with a weight of knowing, with a depth of recognition. It was like being seen for the first time after years of being invisible. Like someone had looked at every part of him, the wreckage, and the grief, and the shame, and the broken leg, and the empty apartment, and the note on the table, and had not flinched. "You are not forgotten. You were never forgotten. Not for a single moment." Marcus gripped the edge of the table. "Jordan needs his father, and I am not finished with you yet." And then the voice said something that undid him completely. Something so specific, so private, so impossible for any other being to know. Something Marcus had whispered to God as a 12-year-old boy in his grandmother's church, a prayer he had never told another living person. The voice repeated it back to him, word for word. Marcus broke. Not the breaking of despair, a different kind of breaking. The kind that happens when something that was sealed too tight for too long finally opens. The kind that feels like destruction, but is actually release. He slid from the chair to the floor. He lay on the linoleum of his kitchen and he wept and he shook and he kept saying over and over, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm here, I'm here. The warmth didn't leave. It stayed, patient, unmovable, enormous in its gentleness, until there was nothing left in Marcus but stillness. He doesn't know how long he lay there. When he finally sat up, the room was the same dim apartment it had always been. The refrigerator still hummed. The wind still moved against the window, but Marcus was not the same man. He got up from the floor. He walked to the kitchen table. He picked up the folded note, and he tore it in half. He called his mother at 2 a.m. When she answered, groggy and frightened, he said, Mama, I need help. I should have called a long time ago. I'm sorry. I need help. She was on a plane the next morning. He called a crisis line that night and talked for an hour. He started therapy the following week, real therapy, with a counselor who didn't try to fix everything in one session, who just sat with him in the truth of it and helped him learn to do the same. It was not a fast healing. Healing like that never is. There were still bad days, still mornings when the weight came back and the silence was too loud and Marcus had to fight for every inch of himself. He won't tell you otherwise because the testimony isn't worth anything if it isn't honest. But he fought. He fought now. Because something had changed. Not his circumstances, not his leg, not the ache in his hip, not the distance between him and Dina, not the nights Jordan slept somewhere else. None of that was different. He was different. Because now he knew, not believed, not hoped, but knew that there was a God who had gotten down on the floor with him, who had been there the whole time in the silence he mistook for absence, who had waited in the dark until Marcus ran out of everything else and finally called out. He went back to church, slowly, hesitantly. He sat in the back for the first 3 months, and that was okay. That was his right, and nobody pushed him further than he was ready to go. He and Dana didn't get back together. That's not how this story goes. But something softened between them. She saw the change in him, not the performed change of a man trying to get his family back, but the real thing, the quiet, terrifying real thing, and she let Jordan spend more time with his father. The first Saturday, Marcus picked Jordan up. His son ran to him full speed across the parking lot and hit him in the stomach with a hug so fierce that Marcus nearly fell over. He wrapped his arms around that boy and put his face in his hair and just held on. He would tell you later that was the moment he fully understood what he almost stole from both of them. Marcus is 41 now. He runs a small support group that meets on Thursday nights in the fellowship hall of his church. It's not official, not organized, not a program. It's just a circle of folding chairs and people who are going through the darkest seasons of their lives and need somewhere to put it down for an hour. He doesn't preach at them. He doesn't hand out Bible verses like prescriptions. He just tells his story, all of it, without editing the ugly parts. And then he says, I am alive because Jesus got on the floor with me. And if you're in the dark tonight, I promise you he will do the same thing for you. You just have to call out. Even if it comes out broken, even if it's just one word, he hears the ones who've run out of words. Some nights people cry. Most nights people cry. And Marcus sits with them in it, the way someone once sat with him, and he doesn't try to rush them through it or make it more comfortable than it is. Because he knows now that the floor is not the end of the story. The floor is where the story begins. Maybe you found this video because you're in a dark place tonight. Maybe you have more in common with Marcus than you were ready to admit when you clicked on this. Maybe the apartment is quiet and the weight is heavy, and you've been going through the motions so long that you've almost forgotten what it felt like to feel something real. I need you to hear this. He is in the room with you right now, not as a concept, not as a symbol, not as a stained glass idea from a church you stopped attending, as a living presence that knows your name, your real name, the one underneath every mask you've ever worn, and is not disgusted by what he sees. He saw Marcus on that kitchen floor with a folded note on the table. He sees you. You don't have to clean yourself up to call out to him. You don't have to deserve it. You don't have to wait until you believe enough or feel enough or have the right words lined up. Just say his name. Just say, Jesus, I need you. I have nothing left. Please. That's all it takes. That is genuinely, completely all it takes. Because here is what Marcus learned on a February night on a cold kitchen floor and has never stopped knowing since. The darkness you are sitting in right now is not too dark for him. He has always been a God who comes to where we are, not where we wish we were, not where we pretend to be, but right here in the real middle of the real mess, right now. He came for Marcus. He will come for you. You are not forgotten. You were never forgotten, not for a single moment. If you or someone you know is struggling tonight, please reach out. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. Just call or text 988. You matter. Your story is not finished. If this video moved you, share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. God put this in your feed for a reason. Don't scroll past that reason. God bless you. We'll see you in the next one.